Welcome to everyone tonight. I've noticed a couple of guests here this evening, so we welcome you to this Thursday evening service. Thank you for being with us tonight. Amen. If you're watching us online, we welcome you, a part of this service as well. Pray that you're blessed by it this evening as well. I don't know if, I'm not sure where we'll go beyond tonight at this point. I'm not prepared to say I feel like this is going to be a direction for a little while. I think parts of it could very well be. But I want to share some things with you this evening. In some ways, it's maybe a little bit of just kind of where I believe we are corporately as well as individually. So we'll just, as Brother Shelton would say, we'll just kind of meander here this evening. Is that all right? We may have to get Brother Jalen to come back after a while and play melodiously, as he would say, but so I will read. I'm going to read one verse to start. I know it's only one verse, but you'd like to stand in honor of that. And it's a familiar verse, but you may have heard this before or heard the direction I feel to go. I will say I've never really focused on this verse in the context of what I feel to do here this evening. I'm sure a bunch of you could actually quote it. And we know. Don't act like don't pretend you're quoting it looking at the screen. Come on. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. Father, thank you for the privilege of being in your presence again with people of like precious faith. Thank you for keeping your hand upon us this last week through the weather that we've had and whatever weather that's to come in the next couple of days and even the next month or two, that you will continue to keep your hand upon us, protect us. God, I pray that you would speak to us tonight. Let your word minister in this place. God, you know where we are individually and you know where we are collectively. You know what we need. You know what needs to be done. So I trust the work of your Spirit in this place tonight, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. You may be seated. This verse is kind of one of those go-to verses when somebody's going through problems and difficulties. It's the one we go to. Everything works together for good. Again, this is really not where I'm going, but I'll just make the point in the beginning here. The problem is there is a context for everything working together for good. The problem is oftentimes that's all we quote. Everything works for good. Well, yes, but based on what? First of all, based on those that love God. But it's based on His purpose as well. So the New Living Translation says it this way. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God. Anybody here love God tonight? He makes everything work together for the good of those who love God. Now it's this last part of the verse I want to focus on in the beginning here tonight. And are called according to His purpose for them. I don't ever want to get into trouble by finding the translation that I like the best and just using that one. If you try hard enough, you can usually find a translation that says it kind of the way you like it. So understand, I'm not wanting to do that, and there's some areas I think that's very dangerous in. But I think in the context of this tonight, it's okay and safe for me to say I really like the way the New Living Translation says it, because it kind of states, it sort of clarifies at the end of this verse, according to His purpose for them. So you and I could say that everything is working together for good according to His purpose for me. And every one of us has a God-given purpose. True fulfillment can only come from fulfilling your God-given purpose. True fulfillment can only come from fulfilling your God-given purpose. This is the way a lot of people try to live. They try to live by putting all the ingredients that they think are necessary into life, so that what comes out hopefully will be good. If I can get a good spouse, if I can get some good kids, if I can get a good job, if I can live in a decent house or dwelling place, if I can drive a nice car, if I can have adequate clothing, or maybe for some, if I can get all the proper ingredients in, then out of that is going to come great life. And that's the way the world lives, and unfortunately that's the way a lot of Christians live. God is just one of the ingredients in their life. The Bible does not say that God is salt for us. The Scripture said that you and I are the salt of the earth. Unfortunately, too many people, God is the salt to just flavor their life. He's not what life is all about. He's not what life revolves around. So I know I need some God, but I got to have some other things too if I'm going to get out life. Let me tell you the way that you and I are supposed to live in our walk with God and our commitment to God. Turn the funnel upside down and let's get God. Because if you can get God put in, what's going to flow out is going to be greater than whatever you tried to put in and force to come out for life. If you don't decide, my life has got to be dependent upon my God-given purpose. My life has got to be based on God's purpose. God's purpose is not just one of the many ingredients of my life that I put in so I can get out life. God's purpose is one of the fundamental things that what I do revolves around. Because everything is working according to that purpose. The reason we get in conflict with God sometimes is because God is working things according to His purpose, but we want things to work according to our purpose. So God is doing one thing, and we want Him doing another thing because we've lost sight of His purpose. We've lost sight of our purpose. Everything in my life from God's side is being done to work out His purpose for me. So if His purpose for my life is way down my list of priorities, He and I are probably going to have some conflict. Everything is working according to His purpose for them, for you. It is all working according to His purpose for me and for you. Barnes' note says this about this word purpose. The word here rendered purpose means properly a proposition or a laying down anything in view of others, and is thus applied to the bread that was laid on the table of showbread. Hence, it means, when applied to the mind, a plan or purpose of mind. It implies that God had a plan, purpose, or intention in regard to all who became Christians. Now, I'm going to edit Mr. Barnes here, if you don't mind. Because God's purpose supersedes just those that become Christians. I believe, and I think it can be proven by the Word of God, whether you become a Christian or not, God created you with a purpose. He didn't just create people with a purpose who would become Christians. Every person created was created with a purpose. Whether you ever find that purpose out or not is the question. It's not whether or not there is a purpose. So keep that in mind as I read the rest. It implies that God had a plan, purpose, or intention in regard to all who became Christians. They are not saved by chance or haphazard. God does not convert people without design, and His designs are not new but are eternal. What He does, He always meant to do. What is right for Him to do, it was right always to intend to do. What God always meant to do is His purpose or plan. I want to go back for a second, and even in the way it says, God had a plan, purpose, or intention in regard to all who became Christians. The point I will use in this context is God's purpose for you being here was not salvation alone. God's number one, or let me rephrase that. God's final goal is not just for you to be saved. Because you were saved with a purpose. You were saved with a purpose. You were created with a purpose, but you're also saved with a purpose. And that purpose is not to come to church faithfully and worship a little bit in church and do your thing a little bit in church and then go about the rest of your life your way. That's not the purpose for which He saved you. I got a question, and this is, I'm not going to do this because first of all, I don't want to embarrass anybody in any way. But here we sit on Thursday night. Again, Thursday night is when you get closer down to kind of the core committed group of the church. I would guesstimate, looking over this audience right now, that at the very least a third, I would almost guess up to a half, of the people sitting in this room right now, if I were to ask the question, how many of you are confident in your purpose in God, I would not be surprised if at least half of you did not raise your hand. Let me rephrase that. I would be surprised if half the people in this room raised their hand with confidence and said, not only do I know God has a purpose, but I know my purpose. If you've been saved longer than 30 days, something's wrong. Probably longer, a little longer than that for a time of growing. But let me tell you something. If you've been sitting on these seats for years and that's you, something is wrong. Something is wrong. Now, I'm going to get to this I'm going to get to this towards the end this evening. Very well may be that ministry with regards to leadership has to bear some degree of that responsibility, but only a portion. Because the bottom line is, if you care about the fact that God has a purpose and want to know what that purpose is, you're going to do what's necessary to find that purpose. That may be some extra prayer and some extra fasting and some extra focus, but you're going to do what's necessary to find it. Because I believe, ultimately, you got to get that for yourself. Somebody comes to me thinking about getting married, and Brother Wright, we think we're attracted to each other. We think it's the will of God for us to get married. What do you think? That is, I'm going to tell you, the only way I'm giving an answer to that, affirmative or disagreeing, is if I get basically an audible voice from God. Because from my perspective and my pastoral principles that I live by, that is a lose-lose answer. Because if you don't think it's the will of God and they are convinced it is, and you tell them no and they're not submitted, they're either going to break it off and be resentful, or they're going to be rebellious and plow ahead. But the other side's just as dangerous. Yep, I agree it's the will of God. You're right, I agree. You're not sitting in my office 3 or 4 years from now when all hell has broken loose in your marriage and point your finger in my face and say, you said it was the... No way. You're not getting me either way. I know some other folks, they're bold enough to give their opinion. God bless you. I'm going to say it again. If God gives me almost an audible voice, then I will answer that question. Otherwise, I will smile and put my best poker face on. You got to know for yourself. The problem is, if the only reason you know what your purpose is because myself as your pastor or somebody else told you your purpose, when things aren't going well, you're not going to have the confidence and the faith you need to say, you know what, this is my God-given purpose. And so if it's not working well right now, I'm just going to stay put because I know what I've been called for. I know what God has created me for. I'm not going to read the King James for the sake of time here tonight, but Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. I've read this verse and the verses after it numerous times. I've used them various times preaching, but something as I was preparing for tonight and read it just really stood out to me. So verse 5, the Amplified says it this way. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew and approved of you as my chosen instrument. And before you were born, I separated and set you apart, consecrating you, and I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. The New Living Translation says it like this: I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as my prophet to the nations. In the Message Bible, before I shaped you in the womb, I knew all about you. Before you saw the light of day, I had holy plans for you. A prophet to the nations. That's what I had in mind for you. Now, not every one of us is called to be a prophet to the nations, but how many of you believe God is no respecter of persons? Believe that? If that's the case, then while I and you may not be called to be a prophet to the nation, the principle is before he was ever born, before he ever breathed his first breath, God had already given him a plan or a purpose. So if God is no respecter of persons, before you and I ever breathed our first breath, oh, hallelujah. Before you ever breathed your first breath, your purpose was already established. I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. I knew you before I formed you. You were known before you were formed. Oh boy, it's not getting you the way it got me, so let's see if I can help it get you. You were known before you were formed. You were known not after you were formed, before you were even formed. You were known. Let me see if I can try to give an analogy to try to. Brother Kimball is a business owner. So let me get one of these young guys here. Let me see. Timothy, come help me for a second. You see, if Brother Kimball was hiring for a position, and Timothy comes and applies for that position, he knows Timothy. He doesn't know what's going to be formed. He knows Timothy, but he doesn't know what Timothy's really going to become. He sits down with a resume and says, this is why I'm qualified for the job, but you know him, you don't know what he's going to be. You have got to wait and find out, is he going to really be formed into a good employee? You know him and you take a risk on him, and you might reach the point that says, you know what, he ain't forming very well. You and I know before it's formed. Thank you. I knew my wife before she was formed as a wife. When I proposed and she accepted, we were both taking a gamble on what we would be. Oh, it's here, but I don't think it's getting here. We were taking a risk. We had hopes and dreams. But we knew each other as we were, not what we were going to be. He knew you even before He formed you. He didn't have to wait to see. His knowing before forming was not like our knowing. So not only did He know you before He formed you, but because He knew you before He formed you according to how He knew you. Try that again. I don't know if I can repeat that. He knew you before He formed you. So the forming, none of it was accidental because He already knew you. And so the forming of who you are is based on who He knew you to already be. Because He calls those things that are not as though they already were. And so He knows you before He forms you because He knows the end from the beginning. He knew the purpose attached to you before He formed. Before he was even formed, God already knew him. Lady gets pregnant, Your wife gets pregnant. There's a baby that's your baby. That's your child. You may or may not have a sonogram done to find out what it is. If you have one and find out what it's going to be, every now and then the joke was on you, and even that wasn't quite accurate, but most of the time sonogram is fairly accurate. So there's something forming, but you don't really know it. There is, what's the hair color going to be? What color are the eyes going to be? Is he going to be chubby? Is he going to be skinny? What kind of temperament is he going to have? There's something forming, but I don't know it. Not that I don't know it's forming, I don't know what the it is going to be like. My dad, over Christmas, I've heard this story several times. You've heard it, whether you remember. Some of you have, because it's one of those that's gotten used a couple of times in messages. That's why I use my kids, because I got used. So he was telling the story again of when I was born, and apparently because of my position in my mother's womb for a week or two prior to birth, I came out, and apparently my forehead started right at my eyebrows and went to the back of my head. So this long, flat. He tells that when he saw me, he was extremely concerned about how he was going to figure out how to tell my mother that she had just had a deformed child. What had formed and was now known was not what was expected. Thankfully, the rest of the story is he came back a couple hours later and I was normal. So, let me start over. Wherever you are in the process of forming, wherever you are in the process of forming, He already knew you, the completed you, before He started forming, because He has a purpose. Jeremiah is now a grown man having this conversation with God. And God's saying, Jeremiah, you've come a couple of years too late to be trying to tell me what I can and can't do. I already knew you, and everything I did to create and form you is based on the fact I knew you, because I have a purpose that everything is working together for. Let me say something. Brother took my car to get tires today. Brother Middleton picked me up and then took me back, and we were talking about a couple different things on both trips. But there's the generation, this is amazing. One generation comes out of Egypt miraculously, walks through the Red Sea on dry ground, walks around in a wilderness and watches God provide miraculously. And the next generation, their children, arise and don't know God. I don't know the answer to this, and God in His infinite wisdom, hopefully, He's got it all figured out. But let me say something to some of you young people and young adults that have been raised in the church. Most of you have been blessed to not go through the degree of junk your parents went through. And while all of you have been through stuff, compared to the suffering they went through, It's not quite on the same level. And the problem with that is your stuff that really in a lot of ways is minor stuff becomes so magnified in your mind. I don't mean to be unkind, please. I don't mean to be unkind to anybody that has only one child or maybe even two children. But sometimes those of us with 4 and more see some of y'all get stressed with dealing with one. And we're like, what in the world? You had no idea how good you got it. The point is we have our perspective in our world. And if we're not careful, again, what's really in a lot of ways not that big of a deal gets really magnified. And in some ways that's harder to deal with than the big tragedies that are obvious. I have tried, it has been my goal, my desire, it's still my goal and desire to be the absolute best father to my 4 kids that I can be. I can say I've never physically abused them. I've spanked them, but never out of anger, never abused them. I've never verbally abused them. I've never one time called them dumb, stupid, never done any of that. But I also know for a fact that I am not, and the bottom line is I cannot be a perfect father. Can't be it. Impossible. I've already, I'm sure, with all 4 of them, done stuff that has hurt them. And I'm pretty sure, as long as they and I keep breathing, there's more stuff to be done in the future. But if we're not careful, we let our bubble get magnified. And we miss the fact, you know what? Am I suffering some? Yeah, I'm suffering some. Have I been mistreated? Yeah, I've been mistreated. But I got to say, in comparison to what it could be, the bottom line is this: God has to allow stuff in every one of our lives. He has to allow stuff for our development and our growth, because it is through suffering. Somehow, some way, you got to have suffering. The problem is, some go through suffering that everybody is aware of because of the type of suffering, physical problems or a death, or some kind where everybody knows, and I don't mean in a negative gossiping sense. You can't hide it. But then there's a lot of folks that the suffering God chooses for them, you will never see it with your natural eye. It's in secret. It's in private. One is no greater than the other. Because He knew you before He formed you, so He decided He knew what kind of suffering you needed to form you. But He already knew you before He formed you. And He already had a purpose for you. I think sometimes we think, well, whenever I got saved, God was kind of sitting up on His throne looking down going, oh my goodness, I got to get something for them to do now. Got to figure out some kind of place for them. Are you kidding? While we were yet sinners. While we were yet sinners, He died for us. If He died for us while we were sinners, how hard is it for Him to have a purpose for us? Already created. I don't get this thing. I've heard a lot, and there may be a couple of people here, and I don't mean to, I don't want in any way to come across critical or judgmental, so please just hear what I am trying to. I don't have that moment, I don't have that spot where I knew God called me to preach, called me to the ministry. I never had a dream, I never had a vision. All I know is for as long as I can remember, I felt like I was called. No, didn't have any, sort of dramatic experience. It was just kind of there. And I got to be honest, sometimes I feel guilty because I felt that, and that's what I wanted. Because I hear people, I've heard many people, again, there may be some even here tonight, that from a young age, they knew they were called to preach. They knew God had called them, and they ran from it. Fought it and fought it and fought it and ran from it. The problem is this. If that's the purpose He created you for, it's not going to be very pleasant. If you try to live your life your way and run from that for your purpose. Because I read to you the very beginning, everything God does in your life is according to the purpose He has for you. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you yield to that, the better off your life's going to be. Our problem is we want God to work according to our purpose. God, here's my purposes, and I want you to work according to that. God's going, sorry, I was here before you were. I created my purpose before you ever dreamed up your purpose. And my purpose trumps your purpose. And whether you're going to give into it or not, I'm going to do everything I do to work out my purpose in your life. So I want you to just kind of mark that word down in your notes, whether that's mentally or physically somewhere. And now let's go here. Proverbs 29:18, familiar verse for many of you. Where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. I want you to listen to this. Listen to the way these other translations say it. Where there is no revelation, the people cast off restraint. Blessed is he who keeps the law. That first part again. Where there is no revelation or vision, the people cast off restraint. The English Standard Version, I believe is what that ESV is. Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint. Blessed is he who keeps the law. So the King James says, where there is no vision, the people perish. These other translations say that they cast off restraint. The word vision, according to Strong's, means to gaze at, mentally to perceive. It's to contemplate with pleasure. Specifically, it's to have a vision of, to behold, to look, to prophesy, to provide, to see. Where there is no vision, restraint is cast off. Jamieson, Fawcett, and Brown says this, where there is no setting forth of the will of God, whether by special revelation as in old times, or by the ordinary ministration of God's ministers and God's Word. So where there's no vision, where there's no revelation, where there's no setting forth of the will of God, where there are those that have not gotten a glimpse of God's purpose. I think in this context you could substitute will and purpose. Because the purpose in Romans 8:28 is a setting forth. It's what God has propositioned or planned or intended for you. The vision here in this context is that same thing. What God has for you, what God has planned for you, what God's purpose is for you. So where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint. I don't know about you, some of you probably would love this. That just means you need mental help. I have never one time driven across the Bay Bridge and thought to myself, you know what, this bridge would be so much better if they'd get rid of those guardrails. Every now and then, as I'm driving across that bridge, I feel that slight tinge of panic start to kind of come over me. And I got to start doing some spiritual warfare. I got to get control of my mind. Because I start thinking about where I am, what I'm doing, and I like that westbound side much better. Because you can get yourself right in the middle lane and stay right there away from the edges. Most of us appreciate the railing on the side of the bridge. It's restraint. It lets us know where it's safe to stay. It lets us know the parameters that we have to operate in. So those that have no vision cast off restraint. Those that do not have an idea of where God wants to take them eliminate the parameters in their life to live by. And so choices are now made based on what suits me, what brings me the most pleasure, what is it that I want, what is it that pleases me. There is no vision, so now there is no restraint. I thought about doing this and I sort of forgot, and I don't know if I would have really done it if I'd have remembered it, but you ever seen, any of you sports fans, you ever seen some professional athletes a couple of years, couple of decades after their career is over? Now, I'm not talking about linemen in football because I don't think they change much. Those guys were beasts on the field and they stay. One of them that comes to my mind in this context is, if I ever had a sports hero, if I ever had one, this guy would have been the closest, and I don't even prepare to say that he was that, but Cal Ripken Jr. And if you see him now versus when he played, not the same guy. And there's a lot of guys that were in their professional career or even in college, even in high school, there's guys that were very physically fit, that when their career is over, all that goes downhill. Other things go downhill too. That's the context of this. I'm not about to get on holiness and separation and all that. That's where some of you think I'm going. You done missed the boat. Get back in. If I don't have a vision of where God wants to take me, I'm not going to make my decisions based on restraint, based on, okay, I got to make a decision here. What's the best decision to get me closer to the fulfillment of that vision? What do I need to do to get me closer to there? Without vision, there's no restraint. So without vision, you've got really no parameters on the decisions you make for your life. No offense, not trying to be unkind, but that's why some people, their life decisions are made on what the job opportunity is and what's being offered to them. It's not based on how does this affect my ministry? How does this affect my place in God's kingdom? How does this affect my purpose? Because there's no vision, so there's no restraint. When there is vision, everything I do has got to fit in. When there's vision of my purpose and my place and confidence in that, everything's got to be able to get into this end of the funnel. Say, well, I don't think I need that, Brother Wright. Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ needed that. Read Hebrews chapter 12. Who for the joy, the vision set before him, endured the cross. If you don't have a vision, you are a lot less likely to endure. Oh, Jesus. I'm going to say that one again. That wasn't in the notes. If you don't have a vision, you are a lot less likely to endure. No, well, would it be safe to assume over the last couple of years there have been a few times, few situations where the easiest thing would have just been, you know what, this is just not worth it. Away from home, away from your church family, even though I know you were in a great church up there, and then the load and the stress and the pressure. But you were restrained. As much as you may have wanted to get out, you were restrained because of vision. That's why a lot of people never end up getting to where God really wants them to go. Because they don't get that vision, and so they live without restraint. I knew I felt like I needed to go to college. Felt like I needed to go get a college degree. Forgive me for saying it, I felt like I needed to go get one so I could say I had one. The bottom line was, I felt a call on my life, and whatever I did had to fit. I don't know if I've ever said this publicly. I've said it a couple times to a few people here and there. I don't think I've ever even expressed this to my family. So this is one of those nights they get to learn with you. But I really, growing up, I would have loved to have followed in my father's footsteps, and not saying I could have done it, but at least attempted to get into the Naval Academy. But I felt restrained because I felt a vision and a purpose. And the decision had to fit within the restraints. I'm not talking about restraining in a confining prisoner or whatever sense. Constraint, I mean, it's crazy. Timothy's a Patriots fan, and in his defense, he's been one long before they were who they are. He's not a bandwagon fan, and so based on some of that, and Tom Brady, I've heard him talk some. I mean, the dude, I feel sorry for the guy. You living off of what he eats? Why would you want to live? The diet that he has and the way he eats, and I mean, what? That's misery, man. Only problem is he has a restraint because of a vision. I mean, the guy's 41. The guy's 41 years old. 41 years old, performing like he's in his 30s and 20s. There's a vision which produces restraint. Can I say it to you this way? I was going to doodle on my iPad as a whiteboard, but I'll skip that for now. Maybe more distracting at this point than helpful. My purpose is my place in the vision. I want you to think of this. I want you to think of vision right now in two contexts. Vision for your own life individually, vision that God has for you. But then I want you to think of it, vision in the context of us as a body. Your purpose is connecting you to the vision. Your individual, God created you with a purpose for the vision that He has for your life. But then beyond that, God created you for and with a purpose for the vision that He has for this body. But if you don't get a hold of that vision, you live without restraint. Let me tell you, I've said this several times in a one-on-one basis. I'll let the cat out of the bag. You know why I'm lean towards being safe and canceling church services with bad weather? Here's the secret. The reason I will lean towards being safe and cancel services is because there is a group of people that the slightest excuse, they will not come. They're staying home. But then there's this other set of people that if they know we're having church, it don't matter if it's a blizzard where they are. If we're having church, they will be there. I watched that happen a couple of years ago when Antioch North was still coming, when Baltimore was still a part of us. I don't remember exactly what year, but it was in the last 5 years or so. I guess, yeah, it could be in that range. They were still coming. And there was a service night. I don't remember if it was a Thursday or a Sunday, but there was a service night where we had some snow flurries and a little bit of precipitation, and there were people that literally lived in Arnold that stayed home from church, and people that drove from 30 plus miles away and came because their attitude is, if the doors are open, I'm coming. Let me break it down for you in the context of tonight. One group does not have vision, so they have no restraint. The other group has a vision, and therefore there is restraint. And their decisions are not based on the same circumstances that those that have no vision base their circumstances on. When I'm confident I have a purpose, and I have vision for my life, and then there's God-given vision for the body that I'm a part of, there is restraint. There's restraint. There's parameters by which I live. People that live with vision are the people who, Hebrews 12, I think is verse 2, 1 or 2, but people that live with vision, they're the ones that want to know what are the weights that I need to lay aside. People with no vision, they're not laying aside weights. They're fussing with you over whether or not it's even really sin. Those that have vision and purpose and are confident in their purpose and their vision, they're looking for everything that might impede me, might slow me down, might hinder me. Crazy the money spent by athletes, not just professional, athletes of all levels, trying to get every little advantage they can. I mean, they now have ways to hook you up with technology and test you and put you in circumstances and figure out what's, where can you improve your efficiency and your effectiveness. And money gets spent because everybody's looking for an edge. I had a video series playing today as I was doing some work in my office, and there was a guy on there, and he had been a very successful wrestler, high school wrestler, not WWF or whatever it is, not the fake stuff, the real stuff. And he was, I think if I remember correctly, he was undefeated all 4 years of high school and a state champion all 4 years. And then beyond that, he was still competing some and was competing with people that were older and more advanced, and he was beating them. And he said they brought in this I don't know, some kind of specialist or whatever, and they did some videoing and breaking down of his mechanics, and there was this move that was sort of subconscious that he had and wasn't taught. It was just something that came naturally to him, and they recognized that. And so then what they did was they started teaching that to other people. And guess what started happening? Guess what started happening? He started losing his advantage. When you've got vision, you want to know, how can I get there? What do I need to do? What can I do better? How can I improve? See, those with no vision talk a good talk. But those with vision follow through with action, because they are restrained by where they feel they are supposed to be going. So you've got a purpose. You and we have a vision. So what's the point of why we're here? What are we doing? What is the point of the ministry that takes place? I know these verses are very familiar to many of you, but again, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip the King James just to give a little bit more flavor. Ephesians 4:11. And his gifts were varied. He himself appointed and gave men to us, some to be apostles, special messengers, some prophets, inspired preachers and expounders, some evangelists, preachers of the gospel, traveling missionaries, some pastors, shepherds of his flocks, and teachers. Those are the things that he gave to the body. Those are the ministries he gave. And the next verse clearly tells us why he gave those. His intention for these gifts, these varied gifts that he gave, his intention was the perfecting and the full equipping of the saints, his consecrated people, that they should do the work of ministering toward building up Christ's body, the church. Easy to read version. And that same Christ gave these gifts to the two people. He made some to be apostles, some to be prophets, and some to go and tell the good news, and some to care for and teach God's people. Verse 12, he gave them these gifts. Christ gave these gifts to prepare God's people for the work of serving, to make the body of Christ stronger. And lastly, the Living Bible. Some of us have been given special ability as apostles. To others, he has given the gift of being able to preach well. Some have special ability in winning people to Christ, helping them to trust him as their Savior. Still others have a gift for caring for God's people as a shepherd does his sheep, leading and teaching them in the ways of God. Why is it that he gives us these special abilities to do certain things best? It is that God's people will be equipped to live their best life now. Pardon me, I'm reining some things in. It is that God's people will be equipped to prosper, live in nice houses, drive nice cars, wear nice clothes. And it is that God's people can live comfortable, easy, pain-free lives. Oh, He gave all of those things so that God's people would be equipped to do better work for Him, building up the church, the body of Christ, to a position of strength and maturity. Let's go back to purpose. The purpose of the ministry, our purpose as the ministry of this church, is supposed to be to equip you to be ministers. Our purpose is not to help you get over all your hurts. Our purpose is not to just help you have a wonderful, lovely marriage that's problem-free and just fantastic. Our purpose is not to help you figure out how to get more money in your bank account. The purpose of the ministry, the fivefold ministry, as it gets referred to as, is to equip you for your ministry. Not trying to be unkind, I say this because I am troubled by it and I am burdened by it. Really just saying what I've already said in a different way. That I'm afraid a lot of you here tonight are not certain of what your purpose is. I'm also afraid of a lot of you sit here tonight and you don't really have a ministry. Not that you don't have a ministry that God has for you, but you're not in ministry. If we do, as apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, if we do our part to do our job, but you're not interested in being who God created you to be, there's going to be conflict. I need water before I say this next thing. That's why some of you have your personally chosen advisors that you run to. It amazes me. I don't, whatever. I don't know why I'm reluctant to say this, but it amazes me the rumors I get back of how many of you counsel with other people all the time, and I've never, as your pastor, heard from you one time. That person is not going to stand before God in judgment for you. Brother Wright, are you saying everything we've got, every problem we've got to come to you? Absolutely not. Please don't. But it really amazes me when some of you are going through major life situations and you never one time talk to your pastor. The reason you haven't talked to your pastor is you don't want to hear what your pastor has to say, because his answer is going to be based on better equipping you for the work of God's calling, versus the ones you run to are going to put a little salve in your wounds, help you feel a little better, give you a little bit of Advil to relieve the pain. The problem is they haven't dealt with the root, and when the Advil wears off, you got the same problem coming back. You mark it down. The people that are telling you what you want to hear, all they're doing is pruning your branches. And it may provide some temporary, momentary relief, but it's all coming back greater and stronger than it was. Because you've got to do some digging and you've got to get down to the roots, which is not very comfortable to do. But if you really want change, you've got to get to the root of the problem and deal with the root. It is for the equipping. It is for the preparation. It is for the training of God's people to do better work for Him. Please, please, I hope you're not sitting there with some kind of a filter. I'm not talking to you about that you can do better ministry for Antioch. I'm talking about better ministry for what you are called to do. I'm not the only one that can attest to this or share this, but I've had a few. I've had, I guess, one surgery that was on a joint on my shoulder. And I got to tell you, post-surgery pain made pre-surgery pain look like nothing. I had some discomfort. It was my left shoulder. I had some discomfort prior to surgery. I get done with surgery, and that's as far as my left arm can raise. You didn't move it. Exactly right. I mean, I went from being at least able to move it and use it with a little bit of pain to like, the day after surgery. Like my wife she had to get a towel and squeegee my armpit. And then you start going to therapy. And you put your hand on the wall. And you're supposed to walk your hand up the wall. I could walk my hand up the wall before I had surgery. I couldn't get it up 3 or 4 times with my fingers without wanting to cry after. Amazing thing happened 6, 8, 9 months later. I had the same motion I had before surgery, except now all of that discomfort was completely gone. But I had to go through a process to get to that point. There's a lot of you get hooked up to the anesthesia. You're on the table. He's about to put you under, and you freak out and jump off the table and run away. And you deal with it long enough, and you come back to that same point. You get on the table, and he's about ready to do it, ready to surgery, but you know it's going to be painful, and so you run from it again. Brother Wright, hopefully the question doesn't totally need to be asked, but what's your point tonight? What's the context? What's part of the point? There's multiple points. But by the help and grace of God, we as a body are going to do our best to do a better job than we've ever done before at that right there. Equipping you for your ministry. That's not what I signed up for. Then you must have not gotten the real Holy Ghost. Because when you got the real Holy Ghost, you got real ministry attached to your life. And I don't think I have to say this, but say it to be saved. Nobody's talking about it. All of you are called to be in ministry full time. There's a bunch of you, where you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. You're in the right spot. You are in God's place for your life. Your purpose is not, I'm not saying your purpose is about the fact you got to, I know, you guys in high school, that you are in the exact place God wants you. Be telling your parents, I need to quit. God don't want nothing else for you right now. Some of you are on your job is exactly where God put you. You're not there by act. You're not where you are by act. You're not where you are by coincidence. It's not chance. But you know what? You can be where God wants you to be, where God is planning for you to be, and yet His purpose not be your top priority. So, by God's help, more than ever before, if you'll pursue your purpose and get vision from God, the Lord's going to help us to do our part in equipping you for the work of your ministry. Because if you got the Holy Ghost, you have a ministry. If you have the Holy Ghost, you have a ministry. And if you don't know what it is yet, you need to do what you got to do to find it out. Because showing up to church 3 times a week is not your ministry. It is not the peak of what God has called you to. Last verse. Hebrews 6:1, and this is only part of the verse. Therefore, leaving the principles of the doctrine of Christ, let us go on unto... Let me go back to something real quick. I wanted to point this out. This is amazing to me. The King James, again, I didn't put the King James up there for this verse, but the King James says the full... Anybody know what it says? Full equipping. Full equipping. You know what's really interesting to me? I don't know about you, but the word equipping in the English, when I hear that word, that's what comes to my mind is training and teaching. But the word equipping there, the Greek word, is the exact same Greek word used when the disciples were mending their nets. So the equipping is not just knowledge and information. The equipping, what some of y'all been experiencing the last couple of months on Wednesday nights, equipping is not just information on how to do a job. Equipping, a part of equipping is healing and wholeness, mending. But all of that is ultimately, again, not just so you can have a more enjoyable, pain-free, problem-free life, but all of that is because you've got a purpose from God. So Hebrews 6:1. Therefore, leaving the principles of the doctrine of Christ, let us go on unto perfection. Goes on in the King James to say, not laying again. I don't know why the picture's there. If you don't know the rest of the verse, you won't know why that picture's there. Not laying again the foundation. You know what a lot of people's walk with God is like? They get to that point, they got the foundation in place, and then they bring in the dynamite. And they blow it all up, tear it all to pieces, and they start all over and build the foundation again. I thank God for the foundation that this building is on. I thank God for the foundation my house is on. That is absolutely a critical component. It's one of the most important parts of a building. If the foundation is not right, everything else is going to fall apart. But the foundation is not the ultimate goal. The structure on the foundation is supposed to be a part of it. And so too many of us, we keep starting over. Let's go, leaving the principles. Let me read the New Living Translation. So let us stop going over the basic teachings about Christ again and again. Let us go on instead and become mature in our understanding. I've used this many times before. Forgive me for using it again tonight. But can you imagine at 12th grade walking in the first day of class on 12th grade and your teacher saying, all right, everybody, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You'd look at her and say, you know what? One of us is in the wrong class. Either I'm in the wrong place or you're in the wrong place because I got that nailed down 12 years ago. We're now going on to other things. We don't abandon A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Everything's built on that. But we don't get taught that over and over and over. That's why some people get tired and bored and disillusioned with church because all they ever want to do is go back and do the foundation again. Do I really need to do this? Do I really have to repent? Do I really have to live holy? Do I really have to... And you just keep tearing up the foundation and rebuilding the foundation. There is so much more to go on to beyond that. Every now and then, even a professional team will have a time where they say, you know what, we need to go back to the basics. And you do sometimes. You got to reinforce the basics. It's necessary to go back and reinforce some things sometimes. Sometimes the foundation might get a little cracked, and you got to do a little work to make sure it's still sure. But you don't stop at the foundation. Some of you here tonight, you can't get beyond. You can't get beyond making up your mind, am I going to really live for God? Sundays, man, you're raring to go. You are. By Tuesday night, I don't even know if I'm going back to church this weekend. You know what you're doing? You're laying again the foundation. You know what? Let's get the foundation done, finished. Leaving, the way the King James says it, leaving, it's not abandoning. It's not talking about abandoning. Doesn't mean we neglect and abandon, though. Doesn't mean we go away from one God and baptism in Jesus' name and the infilling of the Holy Ghost and a separated life. Doesn't mean we forsake those things. It just means we got them settled. Let's do something else. Let's go on to learn how to walk in the Spirit and be led by the Spirit. Let's go on to know how to get a word from God, either for my own self or for somebody else that needs it. Let's go on to learn how to minister to others and how to speak a word of encouragement or a word from God. Let's go on to those things. Why? Because that's a part of the purpose and the vision of what God has. There is a vision. There's a vision for us as a body. There's a vision for you individually. And then for every single one of us, there's purpose that connects us to that vision. Let me remind you as I close, success, your success is not based on how do you match up to somebody else and their purpose. You got to get peace with your purpose and your place. Because you can't do what somebody else does. That's why God created them for that, and vice versa. Back to the Patriots. 3 or 4 years ago, wasn't it? Or how long ago was it? A couple years ago. They were one single game away from an undefeated season. And with the guy that everybody wants to argue is the greatest quarterback of all time. He may very well be, but I'm not a Patriots fan, so I'm not willing to give in to that. They lost. They lost that last game. They lost the Super Bowl with the greatest quarterback. Why? Because there were some 500-pound guys that nobody knows their name, that day they didn't do their job. And it don't matter if you got the GOAT. If the other people aren't doing their job, he ain't the GOAT. Because even the GOAT needs guys to help him. Your value and my value is not position. It's not the title you hold or I hold. My value and your value is my purpose, my place. I close. I would ask you to stand, that way you know, but it'll take me 5 minutes to get your focus back. So they say confession is good for the soul, so here I go. Those of you that are less familiar with Instagram, in addition to sort of the people you follow, you can just kind of explore. And somehow, I have no clue how, but what started getting into my exploring feed on Instagram is a bunch of these mega churches. And some guys, I don't really know them, but based on a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of what I see, they're some of the, big name preachers in our country today. And I was sitting there watching 30-second clips of them preaching, and these thousands of people sitting in their congregation. And I started struggling with my purpose and my place. Because when that's not settled, I use the wrong measurements to determine success. I don't mean success in a carnal, fleshly way, but success as far as doing what we're supposed to do, being who we're supposed to be. I mean, to the point a couple of days ago, I kept, my wife says, she catches me sometimes. And her response always is, I don't know why you put yourself through. I don't know why you even watch that stuff. I don't know either, other than the devil, I guess. You've got to find your purpose and be content with your purpose. Lord willing, I may end up, I know most of you know these verses, but I may come back to them at some point the next couple of weeks. I don't remember the exact quote offhand, but the gist of it is, how can the foot say to the hand, you're not the foot, so we don't need you? Every person has a purpose. Every person born again is connected to the body. And if you're connected to the body, that gives you purpose. I just saw yesterday, I think it was, I was on Facebook a few minutes, and this guy, I think if I remember correctly, he was born in Romania, got adopted. He was born with no arms. And he was sitting there on the stage and a guitar. Sorry, I say guitar from my southern roots, so my wife makes fun of me for that too. I don't know where she is. I'm picking on her because I don't see her. He's sitting there, and I forget the song, popular Christian song, and the dude is playing with his feet and singing. I mean, like, if he wasn't singing, you could still figure out what he was playing with his feet. I got two healthy hands and can do nothing but make noise on a guitar. And he's sitting there with his feet. When you're missing certain members, oh, hallelujah. We didn't have church Sunday. I'm sorry. I'm making up for when you are missing members, well, this will preach in a lot of ways. When you are missing members, other members may learn to make up for the missing member, but that's not ultimately their call and their purpose. And it may be kind of impressive that other members are making up for missing members. But the bottom line is we all would prefer a body that has all members doing what each member is supposed to do. Now would you stand? I've said it a couple of times. I'm going to say it again tonight. I'm changing a word that I've used in the past in these situations. I believe and I know, man, it's I don't know about you, but I look, as much as I love Christmas and the holidays, you reach that point, you look forward to things getting back to normal, and it just, every now and then there's years kind of like this where you come out of the holidays and it just still seems disrupted. It just doesn't quite seem like you've still gotten back in the routine. All of that being said, I believe with all of my heart that we are at a very pivotal time right now in this congregation. The word I used to say was critical, but it just sounds negative. because I don't mean it negative at all. I mean it in a very positive way. That I believe we are at a very pivotal point of what God is doing and what God is bringing about. And not only is it God's desire, but it's my hope and my desire as the pastor of this congregation that every individual would find their God-given place and purpose in that. Bottom line, I believe with all of my heart, I don't say this to sound dramatic or just whatever. I know there are people that are a part of us that are not here tonight for legitimate, valid reasons, so don't mean this to slight anyone that's not here. But if you're here tonight, you may disagree with me, you may not believe what I'm saying, but I believe if you're in this place tonight, that's because God has given you purpose in this body. It's not mistake, it's not accident, it's not coincidence. I remind you, don't get caught up thinking God tells everybody every single detail of what they're supposed to do. Well, Brother Wright, you say that, but God didn't tell me to come here. God didn't tell me I was supposed to be here. No, God didn't tell Joseph he was supposed to be in a pit either. And He didn't tell him he was supposed to go to prison. He didn't tell him he was supposed to go to Egypt. But when the story was all said and done, Joseph ended up in the palace exactly where God positioned him. So you may think you are where you are by coincidence and circumstances, but there's a God that's bigger than all your circumstances that can orchestrate every step along the way to get you to that place for your purpose. Father, I pray that you would help us tonight. God, I believe, I also feel, we don't walk by feeling, but I feel that we are at a very pivotal point. There are things you are doing. There are things that are taking place, some that we might be able to perceive with our natural eyes, but even more that must be seen through spiritual eyes and spiritual discernment. The things that you are doing, God, at this moment in this congregation for the sake of the vision and the purpose you've given this body. God, I pray for my brothers and sisters that are part of this congregation, whether they're here tonight or unable to be here, that you would help us to equip, to do our part to equip every individual that they might be able to do their part. God, I pray for anyone in this place tonight that the enemy is bombarding them with the lies that they have no place, no purpose in your kingdom, no place, no purpose in this body, this church. I come against that lie tonight, God, because every individual has been given purpose, and you knew us even before you formed us, and so you formed us based on what it was you purposed for us to be. God, I pray for anybody tonight that is sincerely looking to find that purpose that they have not found yet, to get that vision that they have not received yet, God, that you would reveal it to them, that they might have confidence in their purpose and confidence in the vision that you have for them, and that no matter what the circumstances may look like, no matter what take place, that purpose and that vision will be fulfilled if they will live within the restraint of that vision. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. I don't know if there's precipitation. There is some precipitation falling, so please be cautious, careful. May the Lord's hand be upon you as you travel home in Jesus' name.